Hi, this is RSOPerator from RadicalSurvivalism.com, and today I want to talk to you about why it's a good idea for us to get our kids out of public school. My wife and I raise a 12-year-old daughter who gets really good grades, and she's attending public school right now in a fairly small town. And this year, more than any other year, we've run into a lot of problems with regard to her interactions with the other kids in the school and a lot of the kids' behavior. The first of the issues that we ran into this year were with regard to busing. We were putting our daughter on the bus in the morning to ride about 3 miles to school, and not even halfway through the school year, my daughter ran into her first issue, and that was getting on the bus in the morning. She was having a lot of trouble being the last one on, finding a spot to sit, because a lot of the kids think it's cool and think it's okay to lay down in the seats and sleep on the way to school, forcing other students to actually sit on each other's laps. My understanding is the bus driver didn't really get involved in what was going on with regard to this on his bus. So she gets on the bus one morning and is walking up and down the aisle trying to find a place to sit, and a younger girl decides it's pretty cool to kick her in the square in the middle of the back. Kicked in the back. The bus driver didn't notice a 12-year-old student just got kicked in the back. That resulted in phone calls from us to the school and then an actual visit. And in that visit with the principal, we made it clear that it was not okay from our perspective as parents to have our daughter get on the bus in the morning, ended up getting kicked in the back. Interestingly enough, the response that we got with regard to that was, we're making changes to the busing next year, which should be able to address this. So this being about halfway through the school year, we walked out of that meeting talking amongst the two of us, my wife and I, how is it appropriate that issues that are occurring now with regard to violence on the bus really aren't important enough to address until the next school year. So the second of the issues that we ran into this year with regard to our daughter attending public school had to do with some inappropriate touching going on between one of the teachers and the female students in the classroom. Apparently this issue was only happening with the females in the classroom. A number of the girls, we were told, were uncomfortable as a result of the inappropriate touching. We obviously, as soon as we heard about this, brought it to the principal's attention, and my understanding is at this point it's resolved from their end. The idea that we as parents had to call the school and complain about a teacher inappropriately touching female students in the classroom is, from my perspective, pretty mind-blowing. In this day and age, a teacher, and we're not talking about a very young teacher, we're talking about an older gentleman, this day and age should definitely know better than to be putting his hands on the female students in the classroom and actually think he's going to get away with that for any length of time. That's pretty mind-blowing. All right, the third of the issues that we ran into with regard to my daughter attending public school had to do with science class. Part of the curriculum in 7th grade appears to be a discussion about the moon landings. That's fine because that's science. The problem that I had, and I think this was a larger problem with me than the other members of our family, but nevertheless I found this pretty irritating. Apparently the teacher opened up a discussion in science class as part of science curriculum as to whether or not the moon landings were real or they were faked. I have an issue with this because I don't think a discussion on the topic of whether or not the moon landings were real or fake has anything really directly to do with science. I think that plants a seed of mistrust in a young person's mind with regard to the adults around them, and especially the parents. Obviously, the kids are too young to remember. They probably don't even have parents that remember watching the moon landings in real time. And I think what ends up happening is they carry around this idea that potentially they are the American people were being lied to because there's this theory out there that the moon landings were fake, and therefore With that comes the idea that there's mistrust established between the student and the world around them. I think it's a ridiculous thing to really bring up and discuss in science class unless you actually are trying to plant that seed that these moon landings were fake, and thus trying to sort of tune the 7th graders thinking that everything that you read in science and science books, that you hear from your parents, that you hear from older folks who actually were alive during the moon landings, maybe that's just all made up and not true. Interestingly enough, I've actually recorded this video one other time, and I've since decided to come back and remake this video for one reason being is the actual day I recorded the first take of this video about public school, just not even an hour after I finished recording and I was actually preparing to edit this video, I got a call from the school, and the guidance counselor told me that my daughter was actually in her office and had been part of a very toxic exchange between her and one of her friends at the lunch table. The language the girl was using in the lunchroom out loud, where other people can hear, awful and demeaning, a level of anger expressed toward my daughter, for really no good reason other than to belittle her. Precipitated me to jump in the truck and run over to school, have an impromptu meeting with the guidance counselor, and try to create a day-long schedule or a day-long plan to distance my daughter from this other student, because this other student apparently has some anger issues and can't control what comes out of her mouth. This being the fourth major event, in my opinion, that's happened this school year that's prompted my family to have the discussion and to decide, at this point, pretty much without a doubt, we're homeschooling next year. These 4 events, 3 of them at least being completely unacceptable and inappropriate in a school setting. To be honest, as a parent, I feel a little bit guilty, and even asking her or demanding of her, my daughter, to finish this school year, considering the amount of inappropriate nonsense that is occurring in those walls. Nevertheless, we've decided as a family to try to get through the rest of the school year. They're in the last 9 weeks of the school year at this point now. Try to get through the rest of this year, and that will set us up to do everything we need to do to get her home, to begin the homeschool process next year, because I do not, and we do not as a family, want to go through another school year. See what seems like constantly trying to meet with the principal, meet with the guidance counselor, and make a plan to try to create a school day where my daughter is not distracted, irritated, yelled at, and harassed by the other students and the teachers.